What does it really mean to build something that is going to be used by billions of people? What does it really mean to have so much data that only computers have the capacity to make sense of it because it just overwhelms the human brain? What does it mean to make product decisions that can have massive impact around the world?
Any piece of technology, any piece of interaction, giving it an individual personality that exists in like the narrative story that you're trying to tell, or even your internal narrative, it makes it not a piece of technology anymore. It makes it something totally different. And so the more personality that you can give to it, I think the better. And I say personality, and that sometimes comes across as it being a character, and it sometimes can be, but it can also just be in its outward aesthetic. If you were to take just a television and add a completely different aesthetic to it, it becomes something else. It becomes something a little bit more magical than just a TV on the wall.
Sound embodies certain personalities, and so what I do is, if I'm working with somebody else's audio, then I'll listen to it and I will translate that into what I'm pulling out of the sound, so different characteristics. What I like to do is pull out those story elements, even if it's not like a literal story. There's always some underlying idea of even a hint of something happening, the essence of this idea of a story behind every song.
Well, our senses affect our perception of the world. So we learn about the world by touching it, by tasting it, by seeing it, by smelling it, by hearing it. And when you start to play with that, so when you start to play with new relationships, so let's say that I see something red and then I taste it and it actually tastes like lime. Whoa! It really starts to mess with what you think of as real, as right. And so that ability, and that's actually called cross-modal experience, so how one sense can affect a different sense. When we start to play with that, I think there's obviously all sorts of new creativity that can open up, but it also pushes us to rethink our expectations of the world. And I think that that's a really cool way of being. And it allows us then maybe to have different kinds of relationships with other people, for example, right? There's practical application of that too. Not just in making work, but maybe also in our daily lives with how we interact with each other.
If you're not able to influence how people behave, then you're not doing anything relevant. It doesn't matter to people if you're creating this great AR thing that nobody is actually using. So you need to understand people.
Meaningful for me means that the experience itself is super useful and it's also delightful. Useful meaning that users feels like they are using an AR tool for a very specific purpose, and it is actually helping them, and it is better than 2D. And delightful for me means that everything inside of the experience felt smooth and realistic. And they didn't feel like they're interacting with something that's fake, and they are really immersed inside of the experience.
Everyone's a creative, and the tools that are now available to us only just further that.